Welcome, everyone, to this latest edition of the SGO Developer Spotlight. Mike Straw, managing editor of Sports Gamers Online here, joined once again, as it seems to be a yearly episode, with the lead developer, co-founder, founder of Axis Games, Danny Jugan, behind Axis Football 2023. Danny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
So we're gonna get started right off the bat. We're doing this right after the gameplay trailer for Axis 23 was released, and the first thing that comes to mind, and a lot of people noticed it, is just how much different and how much went into gameplay this year as opposed to years past. What can you say about the team's efforts behind improving the on-field aspect of the game?
Well, like you said, we were 95% focused on pure gameplay. For the past 3 years, we've had this plan, and that was to get the game in a better state. And so if you look at 2 years ago, we heavily focused on franchise mode because we simply didn't have the resources financially to implement the gameplay changes that we wanted. And that required mainly large amounts of animations, motion capture, the time and effort to put it in. And so what we have done the past couple of years is we built the stuff under the hood to support the kind of visual gameplay changes that you are now seeing in 23. And we've been slowly acquiring those animations, acquiring the resources needed to put it in. And this year, we finally were able to bring it all together, and we overhauled most of the on-field gameplay. And that is, as you said, evident in the trailer.
Off the field, actually, we'll get to the off the field features in a minute. We'll stick with gameplay. What was the biggest lift? I mean, there's new passing mechanics, new catching, new defensive backs. Like, the amount of swatting and defensive animations, better momentum based tackling where players aren't just getting hit and tipping over. What was the biggest lift for you guys in order to achieve that level?
I think it was so we made a couple partnerships that we're getting ready to go public with in a little bit, and we were really trying to bring the community together. A couple years ago, I went on record saying that I had reached out to some other football developers and who were working in the same engine, putting out a similar game, and saying, "Hey, we should collaborate. Like there are some things that we can share. Still building our own games. We might be focused on slightly different types of football games, but there's a lot of things that we can work together to really benefit the community. At the end of the day, we want to make the best game possible. We want to support the community that has supported us. And so by partnering with these other companies and sharing what we have and receiving what they have, we've really been able to short circuit the normal timeline that we would have to go through to acquire all of the assets that we needed to put them into the game. And so those partnerships have been huge, and being able to implement all of these systems has just been it's been a lot of fun to see the game really come alive.
How has obviously there's been beta, there's been feedback and alpha and beta testers. What has been the general reaction to all these changes from those who've been able to actually play it?
The number one thing everybody keeps saying is that it looks completely different. It plays completely different. And hopefully that is evident in the trailer when you watch it. We know it's, you get clips, and when you see full plays, it's different. But we tried to capture as wide variety of every aspect of gameplay as possible, from the throwing to the catching to the tackling. And we wanted to get as much done as we can. We didn't quite get to offensive defensive line, although we worked a ton on logic there. That complete overhaul will happen next year, and that's really the last main thing that we have to focus on. But I think the tackling and the momentum based interactions that you get when players collide is really the most noticeable thing that we've heard with the beta feedback. Of course, we get the comments about, "Oh, that was an awesome interception," or the defensive back just completely undercut that route, picked it off, and pick six.
Yeah.
And a couple of the really cool back of the end zone toe touch catches and that sort of thing. Those we've gotten a lot of feedback about a lot of things, but the game overall just feels different.
What, obviously, like, there's been positive feedback, and then there's always, and I'll bring it up, the people who want to be negative about everything.
Sure.
And you always get these comments of, well, this game would be good if it was released in 2002. This game
Right.
would be good if it was released on the PS2 or the original Xbox or whatever. I want you, in the nicest way you can, explain a bit just when you are a small studio without these giant AAA budgets and these millions upon millions of dollars to give to tens and hundreds of developers and teams, like, just what goes into getting this game to even where it's at now, where, like, this is still an impressive feat of technology for, especially where Access Football admittedly came from.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Let me give just a brief overview of what I have done this past year. So I am the only one developing this game. I'm the only one writing code, implementing animations, all that sort of stuff. We have a couple other guys on the team that do, user interface graphics, stadium building, outside the game kind of stuff, and they're huge. But I spent probably 2 months designing the pass system, and it was tricky. We'll just say, we'll call it tricky in terms of the math involved with rotating in 3D space and catching and making sure the player's hands were right where the ball was and that sort of thing. So that system took me 2 months, and that was just the catching system. We did tackling on top of that. We did the defensive side. We did the quarterback throwing. And so when you look at what a single developer can do in a year, that's about the maximum capacity that I have. And so we'll get a lot of the negative comments are, like you said, the game looks like it belongs on a PS2, and the graphics are not what you would expect on a next gen console. And there are so many things that one developer can focus on in a year, and we just didn't focus on graphics this year, for one thing. And so, like, if you look at the amount of money that the game earns, because we don't have any sponsors, we don't have any funding coming in, we are completely self-contained. And so the money that we earn from revenue by selling the game, we take and put right back into the game. And it grows every year. Like, we're growing, and that has been fantastic. We love the support. But there still is only so much that we can do in a year. And so,
Yeah.
If you take me and you multiply me times 3, and we have enough money to pay for 3 developers, then we could start focusing on additional things. And that's why there's only so much growth we can do every year. And we try to focus our efforts in the areas that the community asks for, basically. And
Yeah.
gameplay has been very... That's been the number one thing that people have been asking for the past couple of years, and we're just happy that we were able to do a lot of that this year.
Yeah, obviously, off the field, franchise mode has been the deepest franchise mode, admittedly, in sports, aside from maybe what, like, the management games, like
Sure.
a draft day and things like that, that's the point of that game. How has that changed at all with 23, or is that you guys are pretty happy, other than like some minor tweaks here and there right now?
Yeah, so we didn't do a whole lot with franchise mode. I wouldn't say that we're happy with it. And in fact, we've got a pretty active Discord community, and anybody that is a part of that knows that we are planning for that for next year. So we've got major changes coming to scouting and drafting and better ways to manage your team. And so if you look at, and this is basically how we view our game. It has 3 gigantic pillars that hold it up. One pillar is franchise mode, one pillar is customization, and one pillar is gameplay. And we try to look at what pillar is the lowest. And for the past 3 years, that lowest pillar has been gameplay, and the highest pillar has been franchise mode. And so we don't want to continue to build franchise mode when gameplay is all the way down here. And so we shifted focus. Now we're going to bring up gameplay. And we feel like now between franchise mode, customization, and gameplay, they're all about even. And so our goal now is to, all right, now let's split our time more 33%. Let's increase each of those so that we're getting a play editor next year. We're getting better drafting and scouting and other franchise mode features. And we're going to get O-line, D-line overhaul. And so we can grow the game more evenly now that it's in a much more balanced state.
Speaking of customization, one of the new features too is the ability to add team logos to helmets and making them available. How much does the modding community and the customization community really mean to the team?
They are huge. And I don't know that huge is the right word. We have so many leagues that help build the game, and we value the work that they put in. We value the support so much because we built the game largely for people to explore it as a sandbox. That's why we're big on mods from the beginning. We're big on customization. We wanted people to be able to create their own teams and play the game as they wanted. And we love the fact that people then take that and create their own leagues. They stream the games. They have all sorts of stuff and communities built around that. And that has been one of the largest pushes for the growth of this game. They provide us with great feedback, great bug reports, and their interaction with us is just awesome.
Now, one of the things that you told me before we got on was the game's pricing that you wanted to talk about. This year, you're making a pricing change. Could you tell everyone what it is and why you guys decided to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the past 2 years, we've sold the game for $29.99. We've sold it for $30. And the game has consistently grown. We've sold more copies each year. And we are deciding this year to drop the price to $19.99. So we're going to go back to where it was 3 years ago. And I wanted to chat about why for a minute. First of all, let me make sure this is clear. We are not dropping the price point because the game is not good enough. We're not dropping it because we're not selling as many copies as we used to. That is not the case at all. We are dropping it to make the game more accessible to the community. $30 is not a small amount for a game, and we feel like $20 is much more manageable for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Because we release digitally and we don't have physical copies in the stores. We have a lot lower overhead costs than a physical copy would have, which gives us a larger profit margin per copy. And what we want to do is we want to say thank you to the community and pass that on to them. And we want to pass that savings on to them. And especially with the current state of our economy in the U.S.
It's fine.
Inflation isn't a thing.
No.
And so the community's been so good to us. They've been supportive and patient. And this is just a small way that we can say thank you for their continued support for all that they've done.
This year, it comes out in the early fall for PC, out later this year for Xbox and PlayStation. Is there one of the questions I got is there any talk of ultimately putting this game on the Switch? Because this seems like a perfect type of game for that platform. Especially it's a platform that is void of many good football games until Retro Bowl hit the console.
Yeah, so yes. Our rough schedule looks like this. Probably the first week in September, we are going to release on Steam. That's a little bit of a question mark right now, but that's what we're looking at. We're penciled in for there. Probably a couple weeks after that, you'll expect it on Xbox and PlayStation. So mid-September, roughly. We are then going to be working on the mobile version. We haven't put a mobile version out in a while. We were supposed to do it last year. There were some issues with outsourcing that we decided to keep it in-house this year to make sure that it got done ourselves. And the game, in addition to all of the improvements that you saw, one of the things that wasn't really visible is how much better the game runs. Without
Mhm.
getting into the details, we used to have a ragdoll physics tackling system that was special. Um, that's gone. It was really expensive to run. And when we got rid of that, along with some other things, it really improved the optimization. Long story short, the game runs really, really well now. You'll get 60 frames on Xbox and PlayStation, no problem. And the game is in a much better place to be on mobile now. A Switch isn't very different from a high end mobile device.
Yeah.
And so you said very accurately, Access Football seems like an obvious candidate for Switch. Here's the current state. We can't get approval from Nintendo. There was a point in time where Nintendo was allowing any indie developer that applied in. That is no longer the case. And
Which
so,
I don't mean to interrupt, which is weird because when you look at some of the games that get approved for eShop and that are still available on eShop, it I can't remember the outlet, but there was one outlet that did a pretty good piece on why the eShop is turning into kind of like a, I don't want to say cesspool, but it's got some very questionable type of content that you can buy, and I'm just like, it makes some of these restrictions kind of make no sense to me, or how some get through and some don't.
and to me, it seems a lot like the early days of Steam when they had the green light system.
Yeah.
And so I fully admit that I don't know all the reasoning for why they did things. I do know that at one point Nintendo was letting everybody in, and then I think what you described, they said, "Well, we're getting way too much low end content that we don't want. Let's be super restrictive." And when we tried to come in, was just after they decided to be super restrictive, and they keep telling us no. We'll try again, but we are working with a studio that we have worked with in the past, um, who got approved, and we are in talks with them to port the game over. It's an old student of mine, so we're good friends.
Yeah.
They are working on their own games, but they did our very first mobile port, and so we're in talks with them about doing a Switch port. So we're trying our best, but we're a little bit handcuffed.
Yeah. Do you think there's like this weird stigma because it's a sports game, or do you think like I don't know? For some reason, obviously, we always get that weird like sports gamers are viewed differently than general
Yeah,
gamers,
yeah,
and it seems, I don't know. Obviously, this is I don't want to speak for Nintendo as a company, but
sure.
there's always that thought that it's viewed different. It's like, well, sports games don't sell, so why are we going to approve many sports games unless they're coming from larger studios type of thing?
Right.
So it's always something in the back of my mind.
It could be. Maybe they look at it as one of those like gimmicky mobile games where you're just like flicking field goals or something like that. I don't know.
So one of the things, another question that got brought up a lot in our community at SGO and our Discord was partnerships with leagues. We know there's old leagues that you guys have had talks with. We know about the Alliance, but now we have the USFL here. We have the XFL. Is there interest in on your side of partnering and bringing in official licensing of any sort within the Axis environment?
Yes. We right now, and I won't share too much, but we are in talks with the USFL. They have been fantastic. We've had a handful of meetings with them. Our goal is to be able to bring in an officially licensed league
Yeah.
and still maintain the quality and heart of what Axis football is. And so we wouldn't bring in a league if it meant that we had to do away with what makes Axis football, the good parts of it. And there has been no indication from any of the people we've talked to that they want to, wholesale change what the game is. All of our talks have been super positive, and we're very excited about the possibility of working with them. But that comment was more just for reassurance to the community
Yeah.
who love Access Football for what it is, that we aren't going to sacrifice what has gotten us to where we are simply to throw an official licensed league on top of the game.
We'll wrap things up with kind of a open-ended question.
Sure.
There's people watching this, I guarantee, that have never played an Axis game, but they want an alternative. They are sick and tired of what they've been getting. And I get it. We all get it. What would be your 30, 60-second pitch on why they should give this should be the year Axis football is given the chance?
Well, I think two things. One is you're going to get a great game at a great price. That's going to be a lot of fun. For anyone that wishes they could take the great parts of what football gaming used to be and tie it together with lots of customization and a really good franchise mode and just have a lot of fun sitting down and playing football, that's what you're going to get with Axis Football. And so you're going to get a great game at a great price. And the second thing that you're going to get is you're going to get the commitment from our end to continue to make the game better using the money that you bought the game with. And so I think our track record has been pretty good. And you go back and look from 2015, 16, all the way to where we are now. We've been doing this for a while, and we've been consistent, and we've been honest and transparent with what we're doing. We take the money that we earn every year, which isn't a ton, but it's enough to keep pushing us forward. And we put it right back into the game, and we make the game better. And so if you aren't sure, go back and look at the early versions. They're all on Steam. You can find the trailers online. Go look at what the early versions look like and look at where we've come, from the features we've added off the field to the customization to the on-field gameplay. You're going to get a game that's going to continue to improve. And so the money that you're spending isn't just going in some gigantic bank account by a large company. It's directly going to building better football games.
Perfect. Danny, I want to thank you again for joining me as always. I love our talks. I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm looking forward to when Axis 23 comes out.
Thanks for having me.